I've seen young eyes roll, I've heard old voices fade. Been too long, we've lived like we're locked in age-made cages. But wisdom ain't a number, and youth ain't just a phase. We're stronger when we're talking.
Hello, welcome to Bridging of Ages. My name is Dan Mendelevitz. Today, we are talking about unconscious biases and with my special guest, Michelle Steiner. And we'll be getting to a great talk with Michelle in a couple minutes. And just want to let you know, today we're talking about unconscious biases and how does that apply to visible and invisible disabilities. We all carry unconscious biases towards people of different ages and abilities. But first, we need to uncover it in order to correct it. And we've talked on previous shows about unconscious bias, and we're continuing that discussion with Michelle today. Michelle Steiner lives with an invisible disability. From the start, many people have told Michelle where she could not go, yet she went there anyway. She is a photographer and works as a paraeducator for students with disabilities. Michelle has published multiple articles in a variety of publications. She's a staunch advocate for the disability community and runs her own blog and show. After a message from our sponsor, Michelle Steiner will be joining us as our guest on Bridging of Ages. Hello, welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Bridging of Ages, and today my guest is Michelle Steiner. Our topic is on unconscious bias. Welcome, Michelle. Thank you for joining us
Hi.
today.
Oh, thank you for having me. I'm so excited to have this conversation.
Oh, wonderful. So, you talk a lot about and educating people about those invisible disabilities as well as those that are visible. And if you could just give us a little insight into that and have us understand, because I think what people don't see, they don't understand, and their reactions are not from an educated point of view. So you live that every day, and just want
Right,
to see what you have to say. Yeah. So you can,
right.
if
Well, yes, I
you could
do.
let us go right ahead, please.
Sure, I'd be happy to. Well, I think I have a learning disability. I have dyscalculia, which is a math learning disability. and I
Hmm.
have limited hand dexterity in both of my hands, and I have visual perception issues, but it's in my brain, not in my eyes. And when a lot of people think about disabilities, we think of the ones we can see, and you can't see my disability.
Hmm.
So I'll tell people, oh, I have a learning disability. And people will say, well, you don't look like you're disabled. And they're looking for the cane or the walker or the wheelchair or
Uh-huh.
maybe a visible facial feature that might say that I have a certain type of disability. And then they'll tell me, after I explain, okay, some disabilities we can see, some we can't, then they'll say, well, I'm giving you a compliment. And it's really not a compliment either way. There's nothing wrong with having a disability that people can't see. And there's also
Hmm.
nothing wrong with having a disability that people can see too.
So, so you talk about these these common
Mhm.
assumptions, and so how do you start and how do you teach others about these visible and invisible disabilities? How do you educate people so they have a better understanding and can interact better?
I think a lot of times the education needs to begin when they're young. When we have young children, and we,
Hmm.
we learn, like in schools, that there are people with disabilities, and some of them we can see, some of them we can't, but to be kind and to include others and to have those, I think that begins as a very young age with that. And I think we've gotten a little bit better with that. I know just with the different generations. I can see change from whenever I went into school with having a disability. I know my parents, they've seen changes with that. Um, and I think now we have more of this awareness that there are people with disabilities. And I can remember growing up, nobody really talked about disabilities. We didn't want to go and talk. There was that shame that came with it. And even though people knew about them a little more, or I still was in a school that had services for students with and without disabilities. But I think now there's been a push where people aren't really afraid necessarily to talk about having a disability. And I think it's having those conversations that really brings that to light too.
Yeah, we've come a long way. I mean, when I was young,
Mhm.
mostly we didn't even know about it, and some of those kids
Right.
were even hidden away from us. I had
Yep.
very poor eyesight, and I remember being ridiculed just for glasses. So, and that has
Hmm.
changed. Just that
Yeah.
has changed dramatically. And then when, or being always put in the front of the room and not being able to see the board and things like that. So, I did experience some of that, but that was visible. People could see these thick glasses on my face. But I do remember there were some kids who had some things, but we had no understanding. The adults were not teaching us,
Yep.
and I love that there's much more. There's less stigma. There's more education. So obviously people are uncomfortable.
Hmm.
They don't know what to say. You mentioned that in the beginning, and how can you help adults teach children about that? Because I don't think they start off having the prejudices. I think they learn them. So how do you
Right. I think a lot of that is parents talking to their children and showing them how maybe we do approach somebody with a visible disability, but also to do that
Mhm.
with care too. A lot of times, a parent might say, if a child's curious, oh, don't look. Well, the child's going to look. And we do tell them maybe to go
Yes.
up and ask questions, but you want to gauge that too. If you get somebody too that may not want to answer that, that's okay too. Not everybody has to answer um, every single question as well. But maybe to just go up and maybe talk to the person. Just talk to them like they're anybody else that you would, any other child that you would see on the playground, any other adult that you might see, and interact with them. It doesn't always have to be, oh, why is this? Because I even have my feet also turn in when I walk. It's not a disability, but it's a condition that
Mhm.
I have. And I can remember there was somebody on the street that was asking me, why do you walk like that? Or can I ask you this question? And I'm like, all right, I'll explain that until, it might get rude, but I will explain, why I have that. But I think it's just treating somebody like any other person, whether they have a disability that you can see, whether they have one you can't see, or it's just treating somebody that has a disability, just like any other person in life. We might have some things that we're not able to do, or we have things that we might have to do in a different way to get there, but we're still people, and just like anybody else, and our disabilities are just one part of us. So I think it's just going in and realizing that, and just treating them like they're people, and just realizing, okay, they just maybe have a different way of getting there.
Okay, great. I talk a lot on this show about
Hmm.
unconscious bias because
Hmm.
we don't realize we're doing it a lot. And obviously, that happens with ageism, that happens with
Right.
disabilities, that happens with a lot of different things. And how can we help people delve into and really understand that they have those unconscious biases?
I think the first thing that people have to realize is everybody has them. I meet a lot of people that say, "Well, I'm not prejudiced." Well, but
I run
in
into
some
that
form,
too, yes.
right. In some form, you might be might do that. I remember I knew somebody that said, "Oh, I don't have any prejudice. I just don't like lazy people." And I'm thinking, well, you're already in your mind, you have what you view as somebody who's productive, and you
Mhm,
also have somebody who does that. And it may be true, it may not. We don't know, maybe the whole situation, that maybe somebody, why somebody might be doing what they're doing. We might consider somebody as unmotivated. There could be reasons with that as well. But I think it's first addressing your own. Why do you feel that way? Why do you think that
mhm,
way? And to really be honest with that, and to sit with that really uncomfortable feeling that there are people that you don't like. And a lot of times that's tied to experiences that you might have had. And it's just to acknowledge that when we're dealing with people, I think is the first thing to do. And I also think it's just treating those other people with that respect. And once we know that,
mhm.
then we can realize, okay, what do I want to do with this information? I know that I might think about somebody like that, but how do I move forward where I can make sure that I'm keeping that in check, and I'm managing that as well?
Okay, so it sounds a lot like how people are reacting is really a projection of what they're feeling inside. It's not really about the
Hmm.
other person, and it sounds like you're able to help them understand that.
Yep.
Because you talk about, that yours are invisible. So I'm just curious how people react to that and how you're able to, because you're a person who said, okay, everybody told me I can't do this. Well, the heck with that. I'm going to go do it. And you have this wonderful, expansive life that you've been able to create. So I love to hear how you're able to get there and overcome it. And at the same time, teach others, the possibilities.
Well, I get a lot of misconceptions when I tell people I have a learning, or a lot of times people don't understand it. I
Hmm.
think I have at my job, I have to tell other people that I can't do math. Because people aren't going to know that. They presume competence, they presume
Right.
an adult that definitely has an education. There's nothing that they would think would come in that way. And
Hmm.
but a lot of times I'll tell people that and they don't understand. I've had people who have said, well, why don't you, or I'm teaching you how to do this, or I'm showing you. And I'm thinking, okay, this, or are you going to try? And it's like, well, we've already tried doing a lot of that. It's just something that simply is not going to happen. I also have people that might make comments that society is lazy. For example, with I can't tell time on the face of a clock. So I have to use a digital watch, or I have to use a digital display. I have my Fitbit to tell what time it is, and I
Hmm.
also have people that think, well, why can't you do that? Everybody else could do that. Should we have to change just because of you? And when I'm really saying, I'm fine if you want to read the time on an analog clock, go for it. But I figured out what I need to do in my life to do that. Handwriting is another big issue too. My handwriting is not very good with my limited hand dexterity, and for years, people were saying that I was sloppy, or I had someone even told me I had the handwriting of a serial killer. And
Oh,
it's just,
yeah.
when I learned how to type, that's what works for me. And I have people saying, well, we should be teaching cursive. And I mean, I understand that's a debate. I know there's pros to that too. And I'm not against teaching handwriting for a child. But I think that if we get to a certain point after we're repeating this information and it's not working, we got to look for another approach. So, what I like to try to do is look for things that work for me. And a lot of times, I even see this in generations. Sometimes the older generation has a harder time accepting that than maybe the younger generation does.
Okay, well that talks to the progress we talked about early on, that
Hmm.
that people are learning. Um,
Yeah.
but don't discount us who are a little bit older, where
No,
people like myself are more than open to learn. I think the
of
beauty
course.
of today's world is you have other choices. I
Right.
could only
Exactly.
write. When I was young, and kids who had trouble with that struggled. There was not an option. Now you can
Hmm.
do, speech
Right.
to text, you can type, you
Hmm.
have all these other options. I have to say that I feel the loss of cursive, mainly because I just think if you are able to, it's just good to learn. Um,
Right. Oh,
and
yeah.
it's nice to be able to, and if nothing else, to be able to read it so that other people
Hmm.
know. And I'm sure you're able to do that. As you've mentioned, physically it's a difficult thing, and that should not
Hmm.
hold you back. And we
Right.
talk a lot about that with age and disabilities, and
Hmm.
things that are different, and in accommodating that. I'm curious. So you're able to get out in the world, and you're working, and
Hmm.
and you're finding accommodations, and you're teaching people. Um, how can you tell other businesses to say, okay, you need to bring people in who are different than you're used to because they are very productive people?
I think that is definitely important because a lot of people with disabilities are not employed. In fact, we have 80% of people with disabilities don't have jobs with that. So I
Mhm.
think that, and some are underemployed as well. So I think it's
Sure.
really important that we show, we work with other businesses and we work with other places to show how can we accommodate and make this work for somebody who has a disability, because that provides a different perspective, a different voice for that too. And I think that that's really important to do that, to be able to put that out there with just having that. And I think a lot of times maybe a business might be afraid. They might think, oh, that person is not going to be able to do the job, or that person uh, might, we can't accommodate them, or they might be a liability where we might have a lawsuit. And I think it's really important to realize that with people that come in with disabilities, a lot of the work accommodations don't cost a lot of money.
Sure.
And a person with a disability can, a lot of them have are really great employees that can come in and they can do the job well if they have the right supports. And they're not a liability. They are actually a really valuable asset when we put them in the right position and we offer the right supports.
Yeah, and do you have any advice on telling them why to take a chance? Because I know people are a bit gun shy of hiring people that are different
Hmm.
from them, and I have thoughts on that also that have come up in my show, but I'd like to
Right.
hear your take on it.
I think the reason I say that to take that chance is you get a different perspective. And it's just, that is one of those things, especially with me. I used to always wonder, well, how am I going to be a teacher's aide if I can't do math very well? And especially when we're working with middle school age students.
Mhm.
But I realized though that that actually is something that strengthens me rather than weakens me, because I know it's caused me to be empathetic. I know what a lot of my students are thinking and facing. In fact, sometimes it's like hearing a recording of myself at that age. I think to myself, I hear people say, "Oh, I hate my disability. It makes me stupid," and I get to be that assuring voice to tell them that it's not wrong. There's nothing wrong with having a disability, and it doesn't make you stupid. And I also am very clear that I cannot help with math. My students understand that. And I think that that's really a humbling thing as well, because all my students need to realize adults are just like anybody else. We have things that we're good at, we have things that we struggle with. And it's okay to do that. But I can, and I also get to show them how to advocate for themselves, because I think that's really important. Uh, One day, all my students will leave me, and I hope every dream of theirs comes true. But they're going to have, for a lot of them, their disabilities aren't going to leave. So they have to learn how to be able to speak up for themselves. And I think just showing them how to have that advocacy as a skill. And we have to teach that from a very young age. And nobody starts out as being great at saying what they need. And I always say the conversation never gets easier, but I always get better every single time I do it.
Wow, that's a wonderful point that you're able to give that to them. You give them a different perspective. A lot of what I
Mhm.
talk about on my show is, we concentrate more on ageism, but I also
Mhm.
like to look at differences in different aspects. And one of the reasons I wanted to bring you on, and
Mhm.
it's really important to understand that we have to reflect what's outside, what our constituency, and
Mhm.
who we sell to, those kind of things. And I think you offer a lot of that. So this has been great learning about what you do here. What I'd like to do is we're going to take a short break for our sponsor. And after we come back, I'd like to hear from you about some of your writings and advocacy and what you're doing out in the world to help educate and bring people a better understanding of what you represent. Okay, so we'll be right back. Back to Bridge Builder Bits on Bridging of Ages. Today we talk about talent. We walk past the talent every day, and then we turn around and say, we can't find any talent. How are we excluding it? Because of conscious or unconscious bias. We are not looking at talent that is right in front of us. We walk right by it. Whether it could be because they're too young, they're too old, or don't meet that perfect purple squirrel that we're trying to look for. We walk past talent every day. Don't walk past the talent. It's right in front of you. This has been another Bridge Builder Bits on Bridging of Ages. Hello, welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Bridging of Ages. We're talking about unconscious bias with my special guest, Michelle Steiner. And we were just talking about some of the things that you are doing out in the world, your writings, your
Mhm.
advocacy, and I'd like to hear about, what these wonderful things that you're giving to the world here.
Sure. One of the things I do is I have a blog called Michelle's Mission, where I write about my life with a learning disability, and I feature my photography. I've also had some articles published in different places as well. And I just had a children's book that has been released about a ladybug who could not count her spots, and it talks about dyscalculia.
Oh, that's wonderful. So you've done numerous writings and advocacy out there,
Mhm.
and that's kind of like how I came across you. And So, what is it? Obviously, you write in general about this, dealing with people with disability and the learning and adapting. Are there some specific things that you like to write about in that regard?
Yes, one of the things I always love to put nature analogies with a lot of the things, and I write a lot
Hmm.
about just transformation. I love butterflies, so I might talk about the process of how I accepted my disability with how a butterfly transforms with that and goes through all those different stages. I might talk
Hmm.
about a flower that's unblooming. So I'd like to talk about maybe that changed, maybe how I've changed with my attitudes in life and my
Hmm.
view on having a disability. I think that's one of the topics I'd like to talk about. And I also talk a lot about living in a world that just wasn't really designed for a person that has a disability, and how I go throughout that in my life with being able to adapt and to change.
That's great. I mean, we have obviously we have better technological choices nowadays than we
Hmm.
did in the past, which help adapting. But we also have kind of a difficult social media world that is unforgiving.
Hmm. Oh
And
yeah.
I'm curious what you've come across there. And I said it sounds wonderful that you are always educating and advocating. And I love that because that's something I
Right.
also like to do. So, what have you come across in that regard?
I've had a very positive, for the most part, a positive
Hmm.
experience with social media. Is definitely one of those things that I have to be able to get the word out about my writing and things.
Hmm.
But I also think it was really nice in some ways as well, because I got to meet other people that had a math disability. And
Uh-huh.
I didn't
Oh,
have that
wow.
whenever I
Okay.
was growing up. I Everybody had a reading disability or behavior issues, and I felt like I was the only one that really struggled with that. And a lot of the books that were out about learning disabilities for adults were people that were had more reading disabilities, and I didn't really understand that whole perspective of that. And I didn't know anybody, and a lot of them, I mean, this is definitely nothing against guys, or but a lot of the books too were white men that were in college with reading disabilities. And I
Right.
mean, I understand that there's definitely reading disabilities, and there's definitely guys that have
Hmm.
that, but there's also girls that have it too, and sometimes it can be in a different form. So I didn't really have anything to really connect or somebody to relate to with having
Hmm.
that. But whenever social media came out, I got to meet other people that do struggle with math, and females and males too. I mean, everybody, it
Sure.
doesn't discriminate against people, but my circle widened. And sometimes, though, I do see on social media, though, a lot of times people will say things that aren't always kind to each other online.
Right.
And sometimes, too, people think that you have the perfect life, and I try to keep what I put on there positive, but it doesn't mean I have the perfect life. I have my hangups. I There's moments I just maybe don't always choose to share that online. But sometimes people, I will look at it and I'm like, why would you want to put that out there? But that's me. And yeah, so I think there's good, and I definitely think there's bad. I think for kids, it's harder though too. Like the students that I serve, it creates a lot of
Hmm.
challenges with that. I think growing up being bullied at school, I was happy that I could go home and I could put that behind me. And
Okay.
it also helped, yeah, and it also helped me whenever I knew I was not making a connection with my peers. I was able to go to a different school district. Well, actually, not a different school district. I went to a different program that was outside of my school
Hmm.
district. It was an arts group, and none of the peers knew who I was. And that made a reputation. But a lot of with our students, people know who they are, even if it's a different school, even if it's a different town, a different country, a different state. So
Mhm.
I think sometimes that can be really hard for a lot of our kids too. It's a tool, but there's good and there's bad to it.
Well, sure. Okay. And but I love that, you said you're able to discover others who are having a similar
Yeah.
struggle.
Hmm.
And I will tell you, I was not aware of a math disability. I've heard many
Yeah.
times of reading. I think what's also happening is a lot of adults are just for the first time discovering things that why they struggled as kids that was undiagnosed. And I
Exactly.
mean, in my day, we didn't even look for a lot of this stuff. So,
Hmm.
it's
Right.
wonderful that it's out there. I love how you're educating people, advocating for yourself and others. Um, the what you've talked about with working with the kids, and helping them understand
Hmm.
that, letting them understand that an adult can also struggle. That's critical. I don't think we do a lot of that. And unfortunately, bullying
Hmm.
is out there.
Yep.
And I will tell you, a lot of bullying happens in the workplace. And I think
Yep.
it's because there's a lot of power dynamics there. And that's also unfortunate. They probably carry that from earlier or wherever.
Hmm.
And, what you talked about, saying, hey, take a chance on us because we can be great for you. We can do some things that you can't imagine. We can look at things in
Hmm.
a different perspective. It's what I talk about a lot on this show with ageism. I
Hmm.
said, if you get people with different ages, we have different viewpoints, but when you meld those, and that
Yep.
is very important with various disabilities. You've really given us a strong view of that. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
So yeah, so is there any other little things that maybe I didn't ask that you'd like our audience to know?
I think we got everything. Yes.
Okay, well, good. I really appreciate that you're out there advocating, not just for yourself, but for others. The education is beautiful that you're doing out there. And I've had a
Thank
chance to go on
you.
your site and see some beautiful photography. We didn't get really a chance to talk about that, but you look like you're quite an accomplished photographer on top of everything else. I want to wish you well with your new book. That sounds like
Thank
a
you.
wonderful opportunity for kids and their parents to really have a better understanding and to teach them. And that's all wonderful. So I want to thank you for a wonderful talk today. We're going to take a short break, um,
Okay.
come back and for our audience, talk about a few action items and some things that they can do to better understand and uh, and find those wonderful things that Michelle has brought to us today. And we'll be right back. Welcome back. If you're just joining us, this is Bridging of Ages. We've been talking today with our guest, Michelle Steiner, on unconscious biases. Let's take a look at some action items that you can do in order to incorporate what we've learned today. So, action item one, notice automatic reactions. And this really ties into unconscious biases. So pay attention to your assumptions, your discomfort, and your snap judgments. Because a lot of it is you're reflecting what's inside of you on the outside world. Action item 2. Name the bias. So identify that story that your brain is filling in from the things you don't understand. Our brains are built to do that, to adapt to the world and allow us to understand what's going on around us, and we build those stories. But you need to name that bias. You need to understand that you have a bias towards somebody with a disability or a different age or whatever it is. And when you name it and look at it directly, like Michelle was telling us, don't look away, look directly at the person, ask them. Then when you name it, you can actually work. Action item 3, challenge your assumptions. So ask before helping. Don't assume. Avoid those assumptions. Offer choices. Be open to learning. As we talked about, a person with a disability brings a very different perspective to your business or organization, just like people with different ages and experiences. So they become a great asset for you and help reflect what's really out there in the world. So once again, our action items are: action item 1, notice automatic reactions. Action item 2, name the bias. Action item 3, challenge your assumptions. And our tip of the day is replace with accurate understanding. So seek the person's actual needs, abilities, and preferences. Visible disabilities trigger assumptions based on what we see. Invisible disabilities trigger assumptions based on what we don't see. Age bias amplifies both. So we can correct our bias by uncovering it, not by ignoring it. So remember, the tip is replace with accurate understanding. This has been another episode of Bridging of Ages. My name is Dan Mendelevitz. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel. You can find the QR code in the corner. Invest in brain power, fuel brilliance.